Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. No one likes loud neighbors. The first story will be about them. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Getting back at our loud neighbors. Some backstory. Me and my family moved to a small town about 3 years ago, and we love it here. The people are nice and the schools are great. The only problem we have is our neighbors. The neighbors that live directly behind us are nightmares. They stay up past 2 a.m. having parties on weekdays and aren't very quiet about it. They have a baseball net where they can hit baseballs to it, and it won't hit someone's window, and they use metal bats to hit the balls. So when they do hit, it's super loud. There was one time at 11:30, not too late, but late enough for all of us to be in bed, where one of their kids were using that net. It was loud enough that the whole house could hear it. I was able to hear it from my room, which is on the other side of the house. Anyways, my parents weren't going to be able to sleep with it, so they told him it was too late and that he had to work tomorrow. The kid stopped, and we got some sleep. Next weekend, we were outside talking at around 10 and heard a very loud, deep voice coming from the other side of the fence. "Hey! Not tonight. Some of us have work in the morning." He sounded very proud of himself. We thought it was kind of childish considering it was Saturday and he was just doing it because his kid complained to him about it. Now on to the petty revenge. I was sitting in my room with my windows and door closed in a Zoom meeting for school. We were working on an essay, and since I'm an auditory learner, I take a lot of concentration to read a large text and write from it. While I'm working on my essay, I start to hear a lot of screaming. The screaming was coming from the nightmare neighbors. They were screaming like they were doing it on purpose. It was nonstop and really loud. It made me lose my concentration and I couldn't focus at all. I texted my mom about it and she said she'd heard it too and was sick of her crap. After my class ended, my mom came into my room and asked if I wanted some revenge. She asked me if I wanted to come into the backyard with my brother and just scream. Of course I said yes. We all headed out there and grabbed a couple of drinks and yelled. We would yell like we're being murdered, then stop for a bit, then start it back up. This continued for about 30 minutes. We were all having a good time. Then my mom lets out another one of her ear-bleeding screams. She did it the loudest when we heard, "Stop!" coming from the nightmare neighbors. We all burst out laughing because they did the same thing to us every single day. It was one of the kids that was yelling really loud with the other. I think they finally understood how we felt and haven't really heard much since, but we definitely took that victory, and losing my voice for the next couple days was so worth it. And our second story. Hot women make you do dumb things. I work as a freelance graphic designer, and I've had quite a satisfying year. About 3 weeks ago, I received a message from a girl I'd met at a friend's house a few months ago. I remember talking with her about this nasty thing that had happened to her, where some shady producers had basically tricked her into working for a month with no pay whatsoever. Being a freelancer as well, we talked about how something similar had happened to me a few years back and how I knew exactly what she was going through. I felt sincerely sorry and gave her some advice. Always make sure to have a contract, talk to your friends when you don't know what to do, be sure to clarify everything prior to beginning work, etc. The main thing was, let's help each other when possible. So since I wasn't really tight on money and things were going good, I was pleased to receive a message from her asking me to lend a hand on a 3-page dossier for a documentary she was trying to get off the ground. The dossier was to be sent at a pitching contest. Of course, there was no money to be involved and had no means to pay me. Since I was already working on other stuff at the moment, I clarified I had to give priority to the other paid jobs and that I was not to come up with something for her design, but mostly a consultancy, and that possibly I could assemble the final project based on her ideas regarding photos, font, colors, etc. She seemed okay with it and told me it was fine. Later, I received an email from her about how she didn't have a single design idea for her project and asked me if I could come up with 3 or 4 examples based on 7 random black and white photographs she sent me. I calmly explained that 3 or 4 different prototypes would be a bit much, but I still offered to give it a try without any form of directions or hint, just a basic, well, just make it look good. I sent her one other idea of a cover for her dossier, which personally I liked, and received a text from her the day after. This looks very superficial. Can't you make anything better? It doesn't represent what's on my mind at all." Her tone sounded off and quite rude, but still I thought it was just because she wasn't a native speaker from my country, and texts aren't really ideal to understand someone's tone. Still, I apologized to her for not delivering something she liked and proposed to have an afternoon brainstorming session with her over the phone, which led her to find one single photograph she liked. I also had a 45-minute call one Saturday morning with her executive producer, who seemed to have little understanding of how distribution and securing funding worked in our country, and decided to give them some advice based on my previous experience. Again, this was all something I was doing out of kindness, as I recognized their mistakes as my own past mistakes. Miraculously, though, I received a mock-up a few days later, a simple white background with her favorite photograph in the middle and the title on the upper side. I asked whether she wanted me to improve it, and the girl just replied, "Well, just make it look good." She eventually sent me the text content of the dossier one day before the deadline, and I had to work overnight to have the dossier ready by the morning. After delivering the dossier with an improved cover and the rest of the designs, she claimed the contest had moved the deadline by a week, and as such, she wanted to improve on the text. I warned her I had some jobs coming up, but she just replied, "Oh, it'll only take you a minute to update it," which of course is largely incorrect. Still, I refrained from saying anything because I imagined she was emotionally involved in the project, or well, it was just how she expressed herself. One day before the final deadline, she texted me, "I've been busy and couldn't work on the text. Would you be able to send me the updated dossier by lunch tomorrow if I send you the text tonight or tomorrow morning?" At this point, it seemed like her true colors were starting to show. I calmly replied that I couldn't rush through the morning just to deliver her the dossier, and that I'd send it to her by the afternoon. She replied, "Okay." The day after, I received 3 emails, one with the updated text, longer than the previous version, one with a 17-point list that required modifications on my designs, and a third email requesting a 28-page version of the dossier with an archive of photographs selected by them and a coherent style. I was starting to lose my patience, but still, I respectfully declined to send the 28-page version, telling them a free 3-page version was more than enough, and proceed to follow on their requests, which were mostly written in caps lock and had stuff like "text must be written exactly as the original document," underline all the words in the second paragraph, text should be elegantly formatted, if possible, move the title 2 inches down, this word should have bold style, please. I rushed to get everything done by the evening and exported the file, while I kept receiving texts from the girl like, "Hey, when are you going to send it? Can you give me a time? Are you there? Hey, can you answer me?" The moment I answered her, Photoshop crashed and saved a corrupted PDF of the file. Some paragraphs were impossible to read and the modified project was lost. I had to restart the computer just to get Photoshop to open again. I immediately explained to her the situation and she seemed to understand, so I had to remake the entire project with the new updated text, trying to cram everything in 2 pages since they decided to insert photographs between the paragraphs, despite my advice, and the dossier was finally complete. Few minutes later, this conversation began. "Hey, why is there only one dossier?" "Well, I told you I couldn't make a second one." "Okay." Minutes later, "The dossier seems incomplete to me. Why didn't you follow our required modifications? You forgot to move down the title and make these words with a bold style. The background looks too white. You should have changed it. You know what happened? I had to rush through to have it ready by 6 p.m. I'm sorry if you don't like it. I really tried to make it as simple as possible for you. Why didn't you follow our modifications? These changes would have taken you something like 3 minutes. I know it's not right to ask people to work for nothing, but you could have just said no if you weren't interested. But it's my fault. I shouldn't have asked you anything. Thank you for the time you've lost on this." At this point, my blood started boiling and shot up to my brain. "Dear name, I'm sorry, but I don't believe I caused you any damage. You made me work for 2 weeks, had me come up with an idea for your graphics despite our initial agreement, had me work on a prototype you rudely rejected without any sensitivity, had me endure an entire afternoon and a full morning to explain to you and your partner how things work in this environment, had me send you 2 versions of a dossier I ended up designing mostly by myself, And now you're accusing me of not caring for your project over some missing bold styles? Her reply: "It's true you work for free, and I shouldn't have asked you. But by the moment you accepted, I probably expected more than you're capable of, since it takes nothing to put minimal effort into anything." Here's my final answer. Dear Name, forgive me. I was writing a long and sincere reply to your message, but I suddenly realized I couldn't possibly care less about you and your lack of competence. Our city's full of graphic designers ready to work for absolutely nothing for people without any talent or modesty. Next time, choose better. Bye. And that was it. I'm still angry, and I promised I wouldn't make such a fuss over this story, like posting it on Reddit, but I'm still so angry at her and how rudely entitled she acted. Guaranteed I was a moron to tolerate so many requests and even to work for free, and I probably won't ever work for free anymore for anyone. I like helping around, but she has totally killed my vibe in that regard. Still, how the hell can you be such a choosing brat? I love the part where she says more than you're capable of, when she's clearly thinking of her own lack of capability. And our last story. Can I just have the money? Back in 2009, my husband was deployed to Iraq. I was living in Germany with our 10-year-old special needs daughter and our 3-year-old who just barely survived a horrible virus and had lost her speech. She regained it. This was our first duty station, and I was completely overwhelmed. I called my mother and asked her if she'd come to Germany if I paid for everything, passport, tickets, everything. She said she wasn't sure because she's afraid of flying, but would think about it for a day or so. The next day we talked, and she said she couldn't do it, but could I still give her the around $6,000 so she could fly out to Oregon to hang out with some friends of hers for the summer because she really wanted to see them. That's right, she's too afraid to fly to come help me, but isn't too afraid to ask me for the money to go see someone she actually wanted to see. It took a few more years, but finally she's out of my life. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.